So let's get into this Max Blumenthal Ro Khanna conversation. Because I think Ro Khanna really, I had my opinions about Ro Khanna probably for like a year. I don't really consider him to be progressive, even though he says he is. And I think in this conversation, he kind of outed himself in a way and may not realize that he did that. So if we can go ahead and pull this up, here we go. So Max Blumenthal tweeted this out, and I have the actual video as well. But here's what Max said in this tweet. After campaigning on a peace platform, Ro Khanna sounds like a Bush-era neocon, spouting American exceptionalist bromance about freedom not being free. Okay, so listen to this conversation. So Max Blumenthal approaches Ro Khanna as he's walking outside. I don't know if Ro Khanna's trying to run away or what, but you really need to hear what's said in this conversation, because this is very concerning what Ro Khanna says, but it does show you who Ro Khanna really is and the concerns that I had. So listen to this discussion.
Hi, Max Blumenthal from the Gray Zone. I was just wondering what you thought of the Russian oil ban.
I support the ban on oil.
So do you think that working class Americans should pay more to escalate the cost against Russia?
No, I think we need to ban the oil from Russia, and we need to reduce gas prices in this country. And the way we reduce gas prices is to say to the big oil companies, you can't be making billions of profits while gouging people at the pump.
I mean, prices are already going up massively because of the sanctions, inflation's going up, and that's all to fight Russia. I mean, that's the message Biden and his people are sending. Don't you think,
Eric?
I mean, do you think Americans, what skin in the game do Americans?
So I don't know if you guys are noticing this here, but Ro Khanna is basically repeating the same talking points that Joe Biden had. And remember, he calls himself progressive. And I've tried to tell people this before, that just because someone is a part of the progressive caucus doesn't mean they're actually progressive. So anyone can join it. It's not really a big thing. So the problem that we have here, Ro Khanna just said, when Max is asking him about the oil and the gas prices, Ro Khanna, using the same talking point as Joe Biden, is saying that, well, what we need to do is we need to get these oil companies to lower their prices. Ro Khanna thinks that Max Blumenthal was born yesterday. And the reason why I say that is because I think all of us noticed that once they implemented the sanctions, the gas prices soared. And don't get me wrong, gas prices go up and down over time throughout the year. But they significantly increased after the sanctions. So Ro Khanna is trying to put this back on the oil companies and say it's their fault. They need to lower their prices. But what he doesn't mention is, why did the prices increase in the first place? So that's what Max is trying to catch him on. So I thought that was important to point out. And there's more that he goes on to say here as well. So let's go ahead and go back in.
Americans have for Ukraine.
Americans have the skin in the game to stand up for freedom, to stand up for human rights. We've always done that as a nation. And we want to make sure that we stand up for Europe and NATO, and we stand up to bullies. I mean, people see on television.
I have to pause there too. That part there where Ro Khanna says America has always been this way, that we've always been a nation that stands up for human rights. No, we haven't. Always? Really? When? Let's remember, it wasn't that long ago that gay people couldn't get married in this country. Were we standing up for human rights then? It wasn't that long ago that Black people were still under Jim Crow laws in this country, had to sit at the back of the bus, had separate communities from white people, under-resourced schools. By the way, that's still a problem. Were we standing up for human rights then. And it wasn't the nation that stood up. When you think about the civil rights movement, I've said this before, that was not popular. The majority of people did not approve of the civil rights movement. I don't know what Ro Khanna is talking about. We've always been a nation that stood up for human rights. Really? Remember when women couldn't vote? Remember when Black people couldn't vote? Remember when slaves were considered 3/4 a person? When have we really always been a nation where we stood up for human rights? Come on, Ro. Come on. You got to come back with something better. You really got to come back with something better. That doesn't fly with me. That doesn't fly. All right, I'm going to go back in.
Killing children, killing mothers. I mean, it's horrific. And we as in America, we are the greatest nation in the world. We've always stood up for freedom. We stand up for human rights.
So raising inflation and raising oil prices for freedom.
I don't think that's connected. I think.
I'm sorry, but I caught him again. He said, we've always stood up for freedom. Did you ever hear the Civil War? What is happening here? Did we always stand up for freedom in this country? No, we did not. Spoken like a true politician. Let's go back in. There's a part here, I think, that I cut off a little bit. I'm going to go back just a second. Right about there.
For freedom, we stand up for human rights.
So raising inflation and raising oil prices for freedom.
I don't think that's connected. I think the reason that people are paying $5 at the pump and $6 at the pump is because these big oil companies are profiting billions of dollars. Why is it that they're putting the billions of dollars because the price of oil is going up? Why do they put that in with their stockholders with stock buybacks? Make sure that they are being taxed if they're fleecing the American public and lower the gas prices. That's what we need to do.
Again, he's putting this all back on the companies when at the end of the day, some of the same politicians that work in DC with Ro Khanna take donations from those oil companies. Who does Ro Khanna take donations from? He's not grassroots. You can look this up on Open Secrets. Really? He's putting the blame back on the companies. Never mind the fact that Joe Biden got us into this situation. He's the one who implemented the sanctions. That is why the gas prices are so high. There are people in Southern California paying $7 per gallon for gas. I got gas a couple days ago. It was $5 and some change per gallon. That's high for us here. And I'm not going to be driving anywhere anytime soon. Long story short. So again, he is ignoring the fact that the sanctions are a problem, that the sanctions are an issue. And he's trying to put the blame solely on the oil companies. Let's go back into the video.
Holders with stock buybacks, make sure that they are being taxed if they're fleecing the American public and lower the gas prices. That's what we need to do.
Right, and you kind of ran on an anti-war peace platform. You're part of the Progressive Caucus. Do you support all the foreign fighters and weapons being sent into Ukraine, sending them aircraft, Stinger missiles, calling for an insurgency?
I was opposed to the war in Iraq because that was an unjust war. I had supported the strike in Afghanistan because those were terrorists, and I was opposed.
Busted. So Max Blumenthal just reminded Ro Khanna that he is supposed to be anti-war. That's something that Ro Khanna said about himself, that he's anti-war. But Ro Khanna just told you that, well, you know, I was against the war in Iraq. I approve of what happened in Afghanistan because those were all these exceptions and excuses. That's not anti-war. So let me get this straight, Ro Khanna. you're only anti-war under certain circumstances. So he just told you when it comes to Afghanistan, he supports that. And I told you guys that there are kids starving in Afghanistan right now because of the sanctions that have been imposed by the United States government. Ro Khanna is okay with that. Let's hear what else he says.
Then to the long years in Afghanistan, but I think that this is a just war that the Ukrainians.
So shipping more weapons and escalate.
Well, we're making sure that they are armed to be able to fight that, and the Congress is going to pass $10 billion, and I support them, their ability to stand for self-determination.
So there's the virtue signaling kind of sanction.
Let's hear that again. Let's hear that part one more time.
Because those were terrorists, and I was opposed then to the long years in Afghanistan. But I think that this is a just war that the Ukrainians.
So shipping more weapons and escalate.
Well, we're making sure that they are armed to be able to fight that, and the Congress is going to pass $10 billion, and I support them, their ability to stand for self-determination.
So there's the virtue.
So Ro Khanna just told you that he supports what's happening right now in Ukraine. And Max Blumenthal was asking him, so you support the United States sending them weapons? He goes on to say, I support them being able to defend themselves. Ro Khanna is not anti-war. Would have been better if he just said that. This is why we have to be careful when people use these organizations or these committees like the Progressive Caucus, because even though it has the word progressive in the title, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't really mean anything. I said the same thing about the CBC, the Congressional Black Caucus. I told you, just because it has black in the title doesn't mean they're trying to really do something for black people. The CBC approved and heavily pushed Joe Biden's crime bill. That was not a plus for black people. So I wish that him and Pramila Jayapal would stop pretending like they are progressive. They are not. Pramila Jayapal earlier today tweeted, we need to implement Medicare for all for people. American people need health care now. She was quickly reminded by a friend of mine, weren't you the one that said a couple of months ago that we can't do that right now? Must be election time. Very, very sad. Very, very sad. I'm going to go to some of these comments. I think I missed. Yeah. Gamer says Ro is gaslighting and lying in general. There you go. Lucky Burrito said because Ro Khanna has money in weapons stock. There you go. And we can look up all this information on Open Secrets, by the way. That's why I told you Ro Khanna is not grassroots. You got to look at where he's coming from, the district that he represents, and you'll understand. So I think this is just more telling. I think they're revealing themselves more and more now. I actually wanted to show you this as well because he came back on Twitter and he doubled down, by the way. Max Blumenthal, rightfully so, called him out. Why are there two Ro Khannas on here? Okay. Rightfully so, called him out. So I want to show you this comment from him as well, because this is just ridiculous. Let me share my screen. Let me share this. This just goes to show you that at the end of the day, they don't really want to do anything for the American people. So Ro Khanna goes on to say, while Americans are getting squeezed at the pump, big oil is taking advantage to produce record profits. buy back stock, and send out dividend checks. Our windfall tax on these profits will put money back into the American pockets and incentivize oil companies to push gas prices down. But see, this is the problem, right? Because the problem is people aren't paid a living wage. At the root of it all, that's a big part of the problem. People are not paid a minimum wage. He wants to talk about maximizing profits. That goes back to capitalism. This is what happens in a capitalist society. The people at the top take the most for themselves, and the people at the bottom are exploited. Now, Ro Khanna is not going to tell you that. Because if Ro Khanna says that, then people will start to fearmonger and say, oh, he's talking about socialism. Oh, my God. And he's a capitalist. So at the end of the day, he knows